All systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of Leverage Lane here on the Ship It Nation YouTube station. Got my guy Alex Blickle here with me as always. Going to be breaking down all things Players Championship. We'll try and keep it short and sweet, a little Max Crosby-esque in his time with the Ravens, short and sweet, but it's over, not sweet for everybody, I know. But Alex, how you doing, my friend? We got a chance to do the Mayo show yesterday and went through some stuff, but this show's a little bit different. We're going to cover it from a few different angles.
Yeah, this is going to be a really fun one. I think people are hopefully really going to enjoy it. We're going to get really into the weeds on some topics and some topics that I think everyone's familiar with, but maybe they've never heard why these concepts are so powerful and so important to really think through. So I'm really excited to talk through this one. I know we're excited to just talk about Sawgrass and the Players Championship. And I don't have any tickets this week, but that actually freed me up to take a bit of a unique strategy for myself. So it's going to be a lot of fun to talk through this one.
Yeah, we'll hear about that later as well. Just so you guys know how we covered on this show, we're going to be covering from both the single entry, which is a better focus or more focus than most shows are doing on just single entry in general. Alex being particularly solid at that. And then he talks about, I know he's got a different strategy for this week, but it will apply all the same. And I think it's going to be a really good topic. We're going to talk about wave stacking, the math behind it, how it all works. And then also people talk about certain segments, but they don't actually relate them to topics. And in this case, it's like there's also wave stacking related to contest selection. And we'll have more on that in a minute and trying to blend the world of all things DFS together. So going to be that. We will talk about the weather that we're seeing, the north wind that Alex mentioned for anybody that's caught it this week. And people that don't know that and maybe do know golf and want to go back, it's think hole 17, the year it was like Brooks, Xander, and one other. I forget who the third was with them. I was thinking it was Burns, but it might have been somebody else. But anyway, where they just hit the shots in the air, turned around and laughed before the balls could even land because they knew exactly where those balls were going into the water. So keep that in mind. We'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about the chalk build, how to leverage it in both single entry and MME and all kinds of stuff throughout. But Alex, where do you want to get started here for this week? I'll let you sort of lead the way. We will have a one and done betting segment a little bit later with a couple things quick, but anything else you want to talk about to start things off with the players?
Yeah, I think where we should start is just kind of a general discussion about why wave stacking is powerful and how we can actually use that to our advantage, why not doing it and ignoring it can be really problematic, and then move that into the actual approach for this week and what we want to do, how we want to approach this wave. And so where I'll start is just a little bit of kind of honestly mathematical discussion. So apologies if this is boring, but I think it's a really kind of key thing to understand and think through. And it's a very different type of correlation because obviously when we say hey, we're wave stacking, we're trying to add correlation, but there are multiple types of correlation. And it's a very different type of correlation than what a lot of DFS players are used to with NFL. So think, Joe Burrow throws a touchdown to Jamar Chase. Those guys are correlated because their performance is directly affecting one another. When Chase catches a 60-yard touchdown, that's also a 60-yard touchdown for Joe Burrow. They are directly impacting each other's scores. That's different than in PGA where, just because two guys are in the same wave, let's see, we've got Scottie and Tommy Fleetwood are in the same wave this week. When Scottie makes a birdie, it doesn't help Tommy in any way. So they're not correlated in the same way, but they are positively correlated because what we are trying to do when we are making projections is trying to capture what that player's true expectation is, what his true average and median outcome is. And so the way you can think about that is if they played this tournament in these exact conditions a million times, what would their average score be? And our projections are trying to estimate that true expectation. And we can do a pretty good job most of the time, but when we're faced with a variable as uncertain as weather, these waves can create conditions where we might be a full stroke per round off on Scottie Scheffler's projection for the first two rounds, or a full, maybe half a stroke wrong. And the thing is, the way in which we are wrong about Scottie, we are also wrong about every other player in that wave. So if we're overestimating Scottie by a full stroke, we're also overestimating Tommy and Colin and Hovland and Henley by a full stroke. So I think I was trying to think of, a good way to kind of think about this. And here's what I came out with. So tell me, Tambo, if this makes sense to you. Every Thursday, we get to the opening tee shot and we all open the DraftKings app and we search through our lineups and we look at ownership and we say, oh, nice. I got this guy at 10%, or damn, I don't know if I would have played this guy if I knew he'd be this high owned, right? Imagine if we lived in like some hypothetical world where instantly, as soon as lineups locked, we knew the exact weather and we knew the exact way or the exact effect it would have on scoring. And so we could open our lineup and we could see, oh, nice. I get half a stroke advantage on Rory this week, or I get half a stroke advantage on Hideki. And if you do that, if you get that half a stroke on your first two guys, you want that half stroke advantage to apply to everybody in your lineup. You don't want three guys to be helped by the wave advantage and then the other three to be hurt by it. You want everybody helped. And so in a week like this, where we know there are going to be people who are full stacking earlier, we know there are going to be people who are full stacking late. If you ignore that, the only way that you come out on top is if there actually is zero advantage. If there's a half stroke advantage or even like a quarter stroke advantage, that's actually really important. And anybody who's stacking is going to have an advantage over you. And so we're going to talk more about like what our own approach is and how we're building lineups this week. And I think that's a really kind of key point to keep in mind.
I want to ask you something on that because I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I want to clarify something though, because you're always the best at talking through the math on this side of things. And you literally do projections and ownership for a living, right? On top of everything else that you do, you've got that going for you as well. And they're quite good. So just noting that, a lot of people talk about this and we talk about it a ton of obviously it being baked in already. Now, I know there's other sites and things that, even Data Golf and other sites now coming up with like, oh, we can peg the stroke advantages during the waves and you can adjust for that. But even when you adjust for that and it adjusts the projections, which most of us just do behind the scenes, it's like we're already adjusting for that. It's been known for years that other sites that were doing that with projections, we've been doing the same. We are adjusting for these things because they're important. If it's still telling you though that, hey, you can still play somebody asked here, we're mostly talking about full stacking, like what we would call a 6-0. You're going all AM PM guys. But of note, a lot of the times, if you're not getting, as I've been calling it lately, if you're not getting that British Open style weather where it's like 2.5 to 3 strokes, it is adjusting the projection still. But in reality, what you're seeing more, and I know you do a ton on this stuff, it feels to me like it more so it adjusts the ownership more than anything. And then you are seeing in optimizers that you can actually still have really good lineups that are 4 2s or 5 1s or things like that. So how does that fit into the picture? That's kind of what the added bonus here is of what we want to talk about.
Yeah, I love this question. And I think it gets to honestly like something that you and I talk about a lot, which is I think you and I, especially among people who are involved in the projection process in some way, we probably agree that projections aren't a big part of our process, where we are really trying to focus on the full range of outcomes of players.
Yeah.
And so the main point here is that maybe the projection is already accounting for it that you're looking at. And, a guy is projecting at 0.1 instead of 0.5 strokes gained or something like that per round. And you say, okay, well, he's still, close to as good as some of these guys who are higher owned. Well, the problem there is what happens if that 0.4 stroke advantage or that 0.4 stroke disadvantage also like dramatically lowers his odds of winning or dramatically lowers his odds of a top 5 finish or dramatically lowers his odds of a top 10 finish. So I actually think it's important to look through the entire week and say, okay, well, what happens if they get to the weekend, right? So one of the things I always look out for in these wave advantage situations are, what does Saturday look like? In other words, if I get a guy to just sneak through the cut and he's, let's say, 8 strokes back, does he have a chance to then make a run on the weekend? And one of the ways in which that he's going to have a better chance than usual to make a run on the weekend is if the Saturday weather looks like the earlier tee time, the better, where maybe Saturday is going to look like, an equal wave advantage that we're trying to avoid or trying to play into on either Thursday or Friday. And then you can say, all right, now all I got to do is get my guys through the cut line. And now they have a chance to make a run in it, because anyone who's at the lead, obviously they're going to have a chance to stay at the lead. They're playing against guys who also have those really difficult conditions. But anyone who's a little bit further back in the pack is going to have the more scoreable Saturday conditions to put themselves back in contention. So that's one of the things I look at. And then the other thing I'll say there is, if it's weird because like, I think part of what you're asking is, let's say you have a lineup that you like and you're going with the wave stack you think is going to be advantageous. You've got 4 guys in there already. Can you be contrarian and take 2 values on the other side because you really like them? I think the answer is yes, you can. But if the advantage is small enough that those guys are still under-owned, I think more often than not, you're better off, instead of doing a 4-2, you're better off just going 6-0 the other way and saying, now all 6 of my guys are under-owned. And they're not under-owned because they're bad players or because they're risky players. Like I'm now getting 6 really high quality golfers who are only under-owned because of the wave advantage. And if the weather skews a little bit in my favor, now the lineup as a whole is going to be much, much, much better. So it's one of those things where like it's something you can do, but I think the optimal way to play is something different.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of a mix of both, but I would say like it's one thing that I think you nailed at the end there that people overlook is like what you're seeing in that other wave. And I'll use Showdown for this. This is obviously the evergreen part of the show, so you guys can have this as a takeaway for future. But like I won a ton of money in round 2 and round 3 Showdown playing 5 ones, but my ones are selective. I don't just have random one-offs falling into the lineups. I'm saying, okay, there's Siwoo Kim, Scottie Scheffler, some guys that I'm remembering of like, that I would plug in from the Justin Thomas that I remember having really good rounds. And it's like, but I selected that 4 to 5. I built a bunch of 6-0s and then I let the 5 ones flow freely and got just a small percentage of each. I was still leveraged. I still had it. But if it was one of those guys, but I'm not trying to find the diamond in the rough. I'm just saying I'll take from the 3 to 5 guys that I'm comfortable with. To your point, on a week like this where you could see that advantage either one way or the other, that's why it's oftentimes better, even if it's close, to still stay within a 6-0, because in that scenario you're talking about, it's like it's what's more likely. You get the last 1 or 2 guys right from a wave that's already seemingly going that direction, or that you handpick the exact 2 from the other side that upset the 2 that you didn't take from the current side. And that's the thought process around that. So,
well, and to your point there, like I think Showdown is a different conversation because I mean there are how many guys in this field? 121 and
123, I think, with the new Brooks rule.
Okay, so you've got a huge field here, and compare that to like Saturday Showdown last week when there were 51 guys on the course, or 50 guys on the course. So the ownerships, if this past Saturday, if everyone was trying to, or if enough of the field was trying to stack the early wave, there were probably only like, let's say 2 or 3 guys that you possibly could have chosen over $9,000 who were teeing off early. So all 3 of those guys are going to be like 40% owned. If you deviate from one of those guys to, let's say, a Rory McIlroy, I wonder if I picked him because I used him on Saturday and then got the withdrawal at 5% ownership in a lineup that did really well. Yes, that's why I'm picking him. But 40% owned to 5% owned for one guy, that's a much different bet than, going from, let's say, like a Thor Bjornsson to a Keith Mitchell this week.
Yeah, and just noting on this, Jerry Matt says the projections put out by different sites will be biased, driven based on the weather wave implied benefit per stroke. Yes, and that's what we were saying earlier. Like most sites are doing this already. Some are creating programs that make it seem like they have some crazy advantage or something. Most are just baking it in naturally. But the point of this is that in some cases, and that's why it's not always just about weather. Everyone always takes wave stacking as it has to be weather. This week, I can tell you what, even if there was nothing right now about it's not just the weather, let me put it this way, that's driving Morikawa, Scottie, Ludwig, Siwoo, Henley, Fitzpatrick, Knapp, all these guys. But guess what? They all go out AM, PM. So if AM, PM gets driven on top of that, now you're actually seeing potential for guys being over-owned, something like the Stone, or I like, so here's an example. At Alex, I know at FTN, you guys have GPP scores. That's, part of the stuff that's baked into it where you're like, wait a minute, now it's getting to like a level that's a bit high here. And then for our stuff on the Stone, we have the optimal rates. There's simulation-driven results that we're saying over 10,000 tournaments this played out. This is how often this golfer is likely to show up in the optimal build. And then you're seeing it like, okay, they're optimal to show up 19% of the time, but they're 28% owned now because of this situation. Does it mean it's a bad play? No, you can get there in other ways. Not who you play, it's how you play them. They're clearly still likely to be optimal 19% of the time. But when it's really picking up that steam, that's where you can look for spots to leverage it. And remember, just like Alex always talks about with if you to Scottie or not, if you Scottie, what does that do for the other positions? Like, well, now you're getting more 6K and 7K guys and less of the 8s and 9s. It's the same thing here. If Morikawa, let me just use an obvious example because we're going to get to full-on player stuff in a minute for this week. If Morikawa keeps getting bloated up, how do Xander and Hideki fare at 100, 200 bucks less, 300 bucks less, whatever, than him, 200 and 300 less for Xander and Matsuyama, with Siwoo getting bloated up and Morikawa getting bloated up? How do those other two fare? They obviously go backwards. It doesn't necessarily say they're better golfers or that they will have a better result, but it's just to show again that one thing dictates the other. And even without any weather involved right now, Morikawa and Siwoo are already getting the ownership. And then if more people go AM, PM, it could push that up as well. And I want to add one last thing here, and I'll let you rebuttal it. But most at the very end, like our last stuff is 6 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday night. We do 4 updates on the week with our projections and ownership. I know you guys are going to the last minute. And of course, I'm assuming same at your side, but we're making adjustments the morning of if we have to. If stuff changes and if things come up, we will notify, usually if it's big enough to do so. If something drastic changes, if nothing else really changes, then it's a lot of the case if you don't really know. And that's why I always say, if you have an MME, it's why I'm fine with anyone. Say whatever you want. Oh, must be nice to have 150, or of course you can play all the angles. It's why, if you had all the money in the world, you don't have to put it on one stock. You can build a portfolio of stocks and have different leverage and angles and hedges and advantages that way and risk. It's the same in MME. But just like in single entry, as this show is literally called Leverage Lane, you will find your own lane and run with it. And if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But you're playing to be right and win all the money when you are right, being in that right lane. So I don't know what you want to say to all that, Alex, but just a few things that came to mind from stuff I was seeing here.
Yeah, we're doing the same sort of thing. My final update for FTN usually goes up around like 9 p.m. I like seeing how all the different sites are kind of talking about the weather advantages and monitoring how it's affecting projections around the industry, that sort of thing. So, and I've got to do NBA ownership up until 7:00, so I can't even start the final update until that's over. But
yeah,
I agree with all that, and I think the next kind of point to talk through is, okay, so how are we actually approaching our own lineups? And one of the key things that I think is worth noting is there are 2 ways to do it. The first is you can say, okay, I've got one lineup. I think the PMAM is under-owned, so I'm going to stack PMAM, and now you go find your favorite players in that wave. The opposite approach, and one that I actually like quite a bit, is looking at the GPP scores and finding the players that I like the most first. And now let's say I think, okay, Xander Schauffele is the most under-owned player, over $9,000. And then my favorite value is Keith Mitchell this week. Oh, look, they're both in the PMAM wave. I guess I'll finish my lineup by turning this into a PMAM stack, right? And so letting the plays that I like drive which side I stack, maybe even more so than picking a stack first and then finding the players that fit it best. And obviously that changes if you're doing single entry, if you're doing 3 entry, but as someone who's typically single entry, that's usually my approach. Now this week, and we can talk more about why, but this week, I think the weather and the conditions, there's such a wide range of outcomes that I actually do want both sides of it. And so I'm currently planning to do 3 entry this week and stack both sides. And then I'll probably choose my favorite side to stack twice.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that. I think after I want to just get through some of this, but it almost went like a little bit to what Jerry was saying here again, too, because again, this is what I always get into with people where it's like they turn themselves into something that they don't have to be, where it's like you are allowed to play 3 entries this week and you've decided based on the information at hand, I'm not going to play my standard 1 lineup, pick 6 guys only and live with it. I'm going to take advantage of the information I have and use it to what I think is my advantage and go a 3 entry max, 2 leaning one way to the side. I think one there, like there's multiple decision factors that are going into what you're doing versus, like I said earlier, if you have an MME approach here and you truly believe that there's going to be a wave advantage, whether it's one way or the other, you don't know due to things like delays and this, that, and the other, then if I had a portfolio, I do, spoiler alert, I'll be stacking both ways. So that's the whole point. And people say, oh, that must be nice to cover everything. You could do it too. I'm not telling you to play more money. If you play a one $25 lineup in the Millie Maker and say, I'm just going to play to win the Millie and it's entertainment. I get it. But you're allowed to play the $1 max and play 10 lineups one way and 10 the other and give yourself more chances if you feel that's what this week is for you. If you feel that's the way you want to go, you're allowed to play a $12 single entry with a $9 satellite and just play one lineup and put 21 bucks in and say, I'm going to play it this way. And if I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'm going to play a smaller field with a single entry. I'm willing not to win the Millie and just win whatever the first place prize is there. But I'll at least hopefully win a ticket if it comes up short or wins that too. And like play smart, if you will, quote unquote, or like kind of more sustainable. It's to each their own on all of this stuff. And everybody has their own reasons. But that's the point is if you think there's something like this could happen, you should be building for it. You are allowed to build for it. Nothing is stopping you in the app saying, alert, alert, Jerry, you're only, and Matt, you're only a single entry player. You cannot do this. That doesn't happen. You can do whatever you want. So if you think you have something, you need to save money for these opportunities, or don't put more money at all. I'm not telling you just risk more, just disperse differently. And that's all. Quick note here. Shout out to Obi Trice, real name, no gimmicks, says, do you think it's possible that Scheffler is a massage parlor guy and his wife finally figured it out? He looks very stressed lately, like he needs one. I'm not going to answer the actual breakdown of the craft, era of massage parlors and Justin Tucker's, etc. We've had enough Ravens conversation for today with the Max Crosby stuff, but just noting it, just the Scheffler conversation as a whole. I don't know if you want to go there yet, but I think it's important to talk about a little bit because, Scheffler, even in his press conference yesterday, and I was making fun of everybody this morning for hashtag team watch the tape, the Brian Rolap press conference. I didn't watch it. I got the highlights because other people are paid to get there and get it. And I'll just catch up on it. But that's another topic too. But just of note, Scheffler said what I always say, and I gave you the example pre-show, but it's like in Showdown, if someone bogeys the first hole and then on the last 6 holes, they birdie out the streak, 6 birdies, 7, people go nuts. They're excited. They love it. If that same golfer starts off with 6 birdies, the streak, the excitement, it's all there, and then makes par the rest of the way and bogeys the 18th, people freak out. And it's literally the exact same thing. The score is the same. It just feels because they feel like I should have had that bogey-free round. He lost it on the last. Scheffler did say that yesterday. He said, look, you guys are judging me week to week on these 24th and 12th places you just saw, but what if we just flip my 5 results around this season or mix them a little bit? Would you be saying shit? He's not an aggressive guy, but it's basically what he was saying. He's like, you guys, I'm living shot to shot and, event. You guys are looking at it from just what happened last week type of thing. What's your thoughts on Scheffler?
Yeah, agree there. And we're going to talk a bunch about Scottie once we get into the wave stuff. So do you want to bring up the screen share now? We'll talk through like what we're seeing with the actual waves and then kind of go into how we're going to build throughout each. Yeah,
let's do that.
Cool.
Remove, add, good to go. You got it there. You got the floor.
Cool. Yeah. All right. So here's essentially what we're seeing. And one thing I'll do is I'll show the fact that like you were getting slightly different views from basically every single model. And so number one, we do have the same type of uncertainty that we've had a lot this year in terms of what exactly is the wind going to do. But what I want to talk through here for Thursday and Friday especially is note how many different factors there are that can potentially affect scoring. So the first one obviously is wind strength. And it looks like, the wind kind of builds throughout the day. Maybe it gets a little bit lighter later on. And then Friday, maybe it actually starts heavier and then gets lighter later on. And so you can see a little bit of why the field to this point seems to be preferring the AM PM because there's a chance they avoid some of the strongest winds early. And then they also potentially get the lightest winds late. So that obviously would be really nice for that wave. So there's that. Then we also have precipitation. So let's say that, this rain comes, but there are no weather delays. There's no lightning. There's no electricity. Okay. Now this Thursday morning, they're playing the firmest golf course. And now this is a softer golf course. And Friday is a softer, more receptive golf course. So maybe in that regard, the Thursday the AM PM lineups are actually hurt a little bit because they're the only group that had to face the course at its firmest and with his most teeth in that regard. We also have the possibility, okay, there is lightning here. Nobody has to play here. And so now the PM AM avoids the heaviest winds. It's now the AM PM who gets the heaviest winds, and they now get to play a softer course throughout Friday. And then the AM PM plays on Saturday in the calmest conditions. And so like there are so many options, so many potential runouts. And then the final variable, as we kind of alluded to earlier, we know from experience here and from a lot of players talking about it, like Horschel and Kisner, that the north wind is the most difficult wind on this golf course. It's what's into the wind on 17. It's into and from the right on 18. So not just pushing into the guys, but also pushing towards the water on the left. And we might see it like really, really late on Thursday, but most of this week, what we've seen is that there's no north wind on Thursday, and then it might flip to a north wind on Friday afternoon. And so one of like the really weird outcomes and potential runouts is the AM PM actually gets the lightest winds of all on Friday afternoon. And in those lightest winds, they have the most difficult scoring conditions because it's the only time in the first 2 days that they get the north wind. And so all of this is to say, my view of the weather this week and of scoring conditions and why I think it's worth playing, both sides of the wave advantages, we've got all of these factors that could very severely affect scoring. We don't know how it's going to affect scoring. We don't know which factors are going to win out, but the likelihood that they perfectly cancel each other out so that there's no wave advantage just seems really, really low. And the possibility that some wave advantage and a fairly significant one is going to exist, that probability seems pretty high to me. And so I want to build lineups such that whatever the outcome, I'm going to have at least one lineup that is really, really well positioned and benefits from whatever advantage shows up.
Yeah. And I think, people are asking about like the scoring between the harder and the softer conditions. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think Michael Kim had a tweet that really kind of talked about it well and talked about it in a way that's very specific to TPC Sawgrass. One of the most unique aspects of Sawgrass is the way it demands players shape shots in both directions in a way that you just don't see in most courses. So most players nowadays, they have a shot shape that they love and they stick to. And like mathematically, it's what's best for them, because even if the hole looks like it shapes for a draw, their dispersion just hitting their shot, even if it's a cut, is going to be so much more narrow than trying to play the draw on some holes and then a cut on the next. It's still going to be worth it to just stick to their shot. But Sawgrass doesn't allow you to do that. Sawgrass demands you hit a draw on this shot, and then the approach has to go the other way. So like 11, for example, the par 5, you've got to hit a draw off the tee if you want to hit that fairway and advance the ball to the point where you can reach the green. And then you pretty much have to hit a cut into that green. And they've got a number of holes where that's the case. 18 is another instance where you probably have to hit a draw off the tee. And then if the pin is on the right, you have to hit a cut. Because if you don't hit a cut, it's not just that the pin's potentially on the right-hand side. It's that the green slopes like this, right to left. And so if you're drawing the ball in there, you can't possibly stop it on the hole. It's going to take a bounce and spin, 20, 25 feet from the flag. So if you want to get the ball close, you have to shape it a certain way. And there are a lot of holes like that. But the point that Michael Kim made is if all of a sudden this course is soft, if we're not getting run out in the fairway, if the ball's landing and sticking on the greens instead of taking a bounce and then rolling, now throw all of that out the window. Now everyone can just play their shot around the course. And so it's a very dramatic effect in that way. And that's on top of just the fact that, a lot of these greens are elevated. A lot of the short game shots that you have come from like well below the surface. And so that's another reason why it's harder to stop the ball where you want on shots around the green. And so around the green shots would just become a lot easier if all of a sudden the greens are soft. So basically every aspect of this golf course gets easier in soft conditions, even more so than most courses.
Yeah, we'll get to the chalk lineups in a second here. Just under 2 minutes, guys. Just going to answer a lot of good ones from Jerry Matt today. So shout out to him. Says, think deep analysis is great, guys. I will say the harder part is to know what happens Saturday, Sunday, because you could get the weather wave right for the actual cut line, but maybe not the weekend time. I mean, first off, it is extremely hard to get 6 of 6s, especially in history at this course, Cognizant, those types of courses where it's really tricky. And we've talked about that, where chalk goes to die, et cetera, et cetera. But you do just want to get guys to the weekend. Now, if you want to take it a step further, you can look at it and say, okay, the weekend looks like it's going to be, a ton of around the green shots and extra hard. And, things are going to, we're going to have more rolls off the green and things like that. So I'm going to build for a lineup I think can make the cut, but then a lineup of grinders over the weekend so that if I do get 6 of 6, now I get this. Again, that doesn't change it either. You could have the best golfers in the world. You could have Rory T10 going into the weekend and then he WDs for a back injury. So it's like at API, of course, he crushes. So anything can happen, but you got to get him there first. One of the things, though, that go into this wave stacking and just not just for weather, like we said, for other reasons as well, is that getting them there is just so important. So if you have a lineup, whether it's your single entry or a large part of your portfolio, because you've over leveraged, not over leveraged, but you've leveraged both wave stacks to get enough through. Do you think people really wanted Anirban Lahiri back in the year that it flipped? No, but those who were smart enough to stack the other side of the wave got him into their pool. And I'll use an NFL example because people really relate to that usually quite well. I remember it was one year, I think it was Marvin Harrison before he was Marvin Harrison Jr. And now I don't know if that even means anything because it's kind of the after effect. It's not usually that great, but just noting it, he had like a crazy game and he was a run back in lineups of a stack that was somewhat popular. And people are like, oh, this game is all luck. Of course, how the hell did anyone get to Marv Harrison Jr. on the other side, like in this way? But it's like, it's right in front of you. The way they got to it is the people that stacked the other side and were smart enough to play a run back got to him. And that's how he got into those lineups. And so really that's what you're thinking about for stuff like this. You have to think about this too when you're building your single entry and you say, well, I know golf this week and I know that Scottie is going to be the one. He's back. I got this figured out. Okay, great. That's a start, but there's 5 other spots you have to fill out. And if you fill it out and you like it, and we'll get there in a second, you say, okay, I got my 7K guys I like, got my 6K guys. All these thoughts are good. Now think about the weekend. Let's say the weekend plays harder. Would you, it's again, I don't know. It's your decision, your lane. But would you feel as good with those Warriors going to the weekend when there is going to be likely other 6-6s that are more balanced, better grinders, more, anything can happen. I'm just saying Scottie winning isn't always the be all end all in that situation. So I would take all of these factors into consideration when you're building, whether it's a single entry, one lineup, whatever it's for, or all the way through to your full portfolio up to 150 plus or 300 if you're playing multiple tournaments across uniques and whatever it looks like. So just little things like that are what I like to think about more. Alex, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add there. If not, we can get to the chalk build. I'll flip this back here for us now. Whoops.
Yeah, I think the way we want to approach chalk build this week is probably kind of talk about what the chalk build looks like, as long as we're right about the field kind of favoring the AM PM stack. And then when we talk about how we want to pivot, we can, I think, do kind of 2 different conversations. The first is how do we pivot within this stack, and the other is how do we pivot when we just go to the other stack.
Yeah, one thing I'll say, because I know we just had this big weather conversation and it's all good and all, but like I said, there's a ton to it this week, but unless you're seeing differently, let me just name some names here. Morikawa, Scottie, Ludwig, Siwoo, Henley, Knapp, Fitzpatrick, Akshay, Berger, McNeely, Fleetwood, like all these guys are the AM. That's all the guys I'm hearing people talking about. Like here's who I don't hear people talking about. I don't hear them talking that much about Hideki. Got her up, slight mention. Bobby Mack, not as much. Shane Lowry, not as much. Justin Rose, barely at all. Burns, not really at all. Griffin, we did this with Mayo yesterday. We all kept landing there and saying, no, thank you. Yep. Those guys are all in the PM. Doesn't mean it will work in your favor. I'm just noting it that like if one, then not the other. I don't even think the weather really is what's bloating those guys up right now, as much as just like their projections and their value even before this weather gets baked into it fully.
Yeah, there are really only 2 guys that I think have a chance to be actually 3 guys who have a chance to be really popular from the opposite wave: Cam Young, Minwoo Lee, and Ricky Fowler. Cam and Minwoo especially, and so I think for one thing, like I think the honestly the worst build that you can possibly do this week is a non-stacked lineup that has like the Collins, Siwoo, Henley type start, maybe throw Fitzpatrick in there, and then also goes to the chalk of Cam Young and Minwoo Lee. And now you're getting chalk from both waves. You're not getting any kind of wave advantage. That's the worst way to approach this week for sure, which means that they'll all finish top 10, but regardless.
Well, I will say I fully agree with you, but I just want to note it. Like that's kind of the point too, where if you're doing it, I think you said the key part in the former part of your statement is like, if you're not stacking, like if you're doing that, like here's an example. If you're playing, I don't know, Minwoo and Fowler, yes, they're both getting ownership. Minwoo specifically, like pretty much guaranteed, but most people are playing those with some of the other chalk. If you play, let's say Rory and Hideki with those 2, well, you can now get away with it and you're in that other wave and you're going to be different altogether and everything. And people say, oh, you played that loser donkey chalk, Minwoo Lee. I did, but I played them with guys that you aren't getting. All those lineups most of those lineups are going to have at least one of Morikawa, Siwoo, Henley, other guys that are in that range. Ludwig, we talked about, Fitzpatrick, all those guys above him. Most are going to have at least one, if not multiples of those. So you don't have to wave stack it, but to your point of trying to figure it out that way, if you're going to go that hard on some of these higher owned plays, I think you should do it strategically. Whether you believe that's correct or not, it's up to you. I'm just saying that to me, I'm all for that. And I did it to win my ticket to the mega this week when I did the North Course, South Course thing. All my guys, 10 to 15%. I had none of the 15% plus guys, but I had nobody below 10%. But I was in another wave where I was leaving out all 5 of the popular guys that most were playing 2 to 3 of in their lineups. That's how you can get different, but still be strategic.
Yeah, I agree completely. If you're going to play the Cameron Minwoo chalk, then just turn it into a stack of that side. And then the other thing I'll say is, I think if you are going to stack the AM PM, I think Scottie's the move. I don't know about you, but like when I'm looking at this and I'm looking at our GPP scores, I think it's a pretty clear trend that like the worst GPP scores are all of the guys in the balanced build of this wave stack. It's Morikawa, it's Siwoo, Henley, Fitzpatrick, Oberg. And you can, the thing I really like about the idea of flipping to Scottie builds is, number one, Scottie has a really good GPP score. We're saying that he is very much underowned. And the other thing is, when you use Scottie, you're forced into a very different price range than if you don't use Scottie. And guess what? There are a number of underowned guys, positive GPP scores, in the range that you need to play a bunch of guys from to fit Scottie, who are in that same wave. And so you can actually build like entire lineups of underowned guys in that stack, even as we are projecting that stack to be favored by the field, simply by going to Scottie, because those guys down the board just aren't as popular.
Yeah, and I want to note something important on that too, is it's another example of tying everything we've talked about together already, in that, people say like, but then I got to play all these losers. It's like, if you get the 6 of 6 with Scottie there, it's also highly likely that someone of either, first off, Morikawa and Siwoo types aren't needed, probably because Scottie is now, and that's just going to be a different build. Just again, you can build a Scottie Siwoo lineup. We did some yesterday with Scottie and Morikawa. They're very aggressive, but they can be done. I'm just saying my point of the Fleetwood, Morikawa, Siwoos all get overlooked. They're all super popular. You probably don't have Hovland or Henley, who are sort of the mid-range in that 9K range of ownership. I'm saying you may or may not even have Ludwig at 8,700, and Cam Young is from the other wave. So think about all the chalk you've skipped over there, and you probably don't put Scottie in just all the top owned guys in the 7K range, because typically the 7K, 7,900 below chalk is kind of where it goes to fail. But you can put yourself in a really different range where most guys are 8% or less at the bottom. And you are playing Yahtzee Scheffler, like I always talk about it. Your Scottie in the perfect role is what you're looking for. But man, it can really work in your favor if you do find the 6 of 6 roll. You don't know if it's right when it gets to Saturday morning or whenever the tournament starts, if there's a delay for round 3, but you'll be feeling really good having a 6 of 6 that probably faded some landmines or guys that just are sucking completely and maybe just scraping through and that sort of stuff. And Scottie's leading, and you're in really good shape that way, putting yourself in that position. So I like that topic to sort of tie back everything that we talked about here perfectly. So where do you want to go next with this chalk build? What else are you seeing? 2 9s, 1 8, 3 7s?
Yeah, I think something like that. I do think in terms of like the low 7s, I think the chalk, especially from the AM/PM wave, we've got Noren and Berger, we are much higher on than industry from an ownership perspective. And then I also think like way down the board, we could see Castillo get pushed up a little bit as well, given how well he has played and the fact that he's in that wave. So it's not like people are locked into a specific type of build. I think the big thing is, it seems like people are going to try and jam in as many guys as possible out of the Oberg, Fitzpatrick, Henley, Kim, Morikawa kind of grouping. And maybe you throw Hovland and Tommy and even Bobby Mack into that group as well.
Yeah, I got to add something there too, because this is taken directly from your playbook. I hit it on the Mayo show yesterday, but I know not everybody catches every show. So just to note it again here, but the Castillo point is a great example. He's going to pop off the page in projections at 6,200 down low. And if people are listening to this just said, get Scottie and the low guys in. And then you guys also said, or we're saying it right now, that Castillo's not going to be like super chalk. He's just going to be much more owned than most the 6K players. A lot will just say, well, that means it's no problem then. And I'm not saying don't do it. There's tons of ways to get different in the other 4 spots with your entire construction, all of that. Just remember, though, this is directly from Alex's playbook, that Castillo might only be 6%, which is high for a 6K, but not high overall. 84% of the, or 94% of the field, not playing him anywhere. But think about what his percentage is going to be in Scottie Scheffler lineups. Not many people are going to go to Castillo and not get to Scottie. It's going to be to make Scottie work. So at least something to think about from that perspective, right? So just noting it there.
Yeah, exactly. Said another way, Castillo might be like, we've got him projected at 9% in single entries, 9% overall, but he might be 20% in Scottie lineups. So 20% of the Scottie Scheffler lineups will contain Castillo. So if you're saying like, oh, I've got him and he's a separator for me in my Scottie lineup, no, he's probably not. If you're right about Scottie and you're right about Castillo, you still have to beat 90% or 80% of the other Scottie lineups.
Yeah. And again, there's ways to do it. If you got another 2 6K guys in there that are unowned, as ways to chop into it where most are deciding between them and all, like there's definitely things that you can do differently that then move you off of a 7K range altogether. Cause most Scottie lineups would have at least one 7K. There is stuff you can do. It's just going to be more aggressive. And then think about how's that going to hold up over a full week, 4-day event. Sorry, I should say a whole week event of the players itself. This is another good question. My guy, Matthew Bannister, says, how would you play Scottie in multiple different single entry contests? And I'm curious your take. I've got some thoughts, but like, let's say you had 3 single entries and you were going to play 3 unique single entries, but you wanted to commit to Scottie. So you're at least going to pick a lane and say, I'm in on Scottie. Even if you're in on the AM PM with Scottie, what would your thoughts be on how to play him across different contests if being unique with it?
Well, it's tough because I think I'll just say like the way that I approach single entry, when I'm running single entry, I don't care how many single entry contests I'm in. I'm going to run the same lineup across them. I think if you're in 3 different single entry contests and you are playing 3 different lineups, you're in single entries, but you're playing 3 entry max there, right? Like that's, so I think I would try to do the same thing that we've often talked about with 3 entry, which is you can play it like a single entry where you find the part of your lineup that you think is the strongest. So maybe it's like a Scottie and Thor Bjornsson core or something like that. And then you differentiate around that, or you build I think this week is one where you want the inverse correlation between the lineups. So you want an early stack, a late stack, and then maybe you do whatever you want with the third lineup. But so if you're committed to Scottie, then I think what I would do is say, don't play him in all 3. Play one Scottie that is a full AM PM stack. Play a second lineup that doesn't have Scottie that's a full PM AM stack. And then your third one, maybe you do Scottie and a PM AM, or maybe you just say, I'm going to choose all the plays that I think are the best plays this week, something like that. And maybe mix and match. That's not the way that I would do it. But if you're dead set on like building around Scottie, I think that's the way to do it. But for me, Scottie is simply an answer of how do I play the AM PM stack in the best way possible. And outside of that, I'm not going to play him.
That's why I think you said it best earlier. Again, we can only answer the questions as they're presented, and every player is different and they have different risk adversity. Like, some people want to be all in on Scottie. Some say I want to play him in some want to wave stack with him. Some don't. So just in general, like we'll talk about it from our perspective. I think like you're saying it's Scottie. I like Alex's thoughts of going in on the AM wave because of that. And if you feel really good about 2 to 3 guys that fit those Scottie lineups, I would build it almost as a core and maybe switch your 3 value plays in 2 of them. And then in the last one, make decisions based off of that. But I would kind of core up at the beginning. I probably wouldn't go all in on 3 guys and all of them. Even in the third one, let's say if you have 3 single entries, I might be on like Scottie with 5 opposite side and be like, I'm going to run a 5-1 where it's like, it's just Scottie from the AM that gets through because he's Scottie. He's the best. He comes back around, but nobody's doing this, and look at it from that perspective. So again, these are all the stuff that we talk about. And I love Ryan, so you'll bring it up for him, but it's like, these are all things there's just so many answers to that it really is a lot of specifics to how you feel about it, what you notice with the entire lineup yourself, how you feel if the ownership numbers are right, wrong, or indifferent, on or off. Like, it's all going to be your own personality and your own spin on what you see. If you have a lane, though, like we talk about on this show, you should go with that. So there's nothing where I'm like, oh, it's too low, too high, besides the obvious of like what Alex said earlier. I'm not playing the 5 or 6 highest owned guys in a lineup together in a large field tournament just to say, hopefully I make some cash. That's not what I'm doing. I'm playing to win. It's $1 million to first, 200 to second, 100 to third, even in the mega. It's $1 million to first and 100 to second in the $25. We're playing to win. It's Ship It Nation. I mean, Alex plays to win. We're talking about leverage lane. It's like you're trying to win the tournament. So we're not just trying to ease into a min cash here. So just a couple thoughts on that as well. Anything else on the chalk build that you want to go through? I think obviously we talked a lot about it, but I do think like the Morikawa, Siwoo, Cam Young, Minwoo, like somewhere in that realm of like that type of lineup lands in a lot of places this week.
I think the only place to go from there is like among these really chalky guys, and let's say we're talking about like, okay, we've made the decision already to build the AM PM stack. Which of the chalky guys are you most likely to play? So Morikawa, Siwoo Kim, Henley, Fitzpatrick, Oberg. We can even throw in Cam Young and Minwoo Lee, even though they're in the opposite wave. So maybe the answer is just I'm more likely to play those guys because I'm more likely to flip the build and stack the other side. Or let's see, the other two down lower were Nor and Berger.
I think Scottie and Morikawa up top are both really good. Morikawa is not going to reflect as good because 9,800, it's just going to look so bad if you look at it. But to me, it's all how you build with him. And I think like he's the guy that people like, of course, chalk Morikawa got there, and it does suck. And I'm not saying I'll use him in my mega because of that. Like there's definitely some thoughts there, but in general, I think if I was comparing like Morikawa, I don't know, Morikawa, let's do Siwoo and Henley. I think I prefer like Morikawa up top or Henley down low, but it's Scottie over all those guys at the top. And down low, there's almost nobody that you're going to be like, oh, you got to play him or what. We talked about earlier, the medium projection not mattering as much anyway already, but also just like it's a lot of them are just getting completely pushed up because of like a certain stat or value or something. And there's, in some cases, these price ranges have 7 or 8 guys within the same $100 radius. So there's so many guys that can beat them there. And there's so many other names that you would not be surprised if they pop up. So I'm ignoring it much more down low than I am up top where I'm consciously thinking about it.
Yeah, honestly, I wasn't even like even grouping Scottie in with the chalky guys just because that build is going to be so much more contrarian than the non-Scottie build. But I agree. I think Scottie's the best up there. And I would say I prefer Henley to Morikawa just because you're getting $800 in savings. And I view them very similar. So honestly, this kind of answers the last question too of like how much ownership is too much ownership. Well, I don't really think of it that way. I think of, almost like assigning roles to the players in my lineup. Is this guy in my lineup because he's a high probability play and he can preserve any advantage that I create for myself? Or is this guy one of the separators who's creating that advantage for me? And in both instances, Morikawa and Henley have to fit that second build. They're the first one. They're preserving any advantage that I gain elsewhere. And so I don't really care that, they're over 30% projected ownership in our single entry stuff and our high stakes stuff right now. They're just high probability plays. And so I like both of them, but I prefer Henley for the $800 in savings. And honestly, we have them projected really similarly anyway. And then I don't think I would play any of the chalk way down the board. Actually, 2 guys that we kind of glossed, 3 guys that we kind of glossed over in terms of who is in the chalk build in this stack is actually the mid to upper 7K range with Harris English, Jake Knapp, Akshay Bhatia. And of that group, I think Jake Knapp is the one that I'm most likely to play. Down lower, I'm going to get contrarian if I'm doing that stack.
Yeah, I think I like Harris English just a little bit more than Jake Knapp there as an example, but they're both going to be very similar. I think when things shake out, it's all what you like. But I think you said a key point there too. And I know you guys have it again with GPP scores at FTN, and you can find this stuff. Same with the Stone at Ship It Nation, where you can check it out with the optimals and stuff. It's like what I said earlier of like when a golfer's 19% to be optimal or 22% to be optimal, and they're coming in at 28, it's like not really that crazy. It's like they're coming in a little bit over the top, but they are likely to be that. It's some people see a 4% optimal golfer and they're like, oh, he's coming in at 2% and I'm getting 2% positive leverage. The other guy's negative leverage. The other guy's way more likely to hit. It's just, the numbers show that. So you don't want to be building lineups with just 6 of the best leverage plays on the slate. Now, if you were doing it, golf would be the place to do it, and it's individual and you can get away with it more. But it's the same reason people make fun of it in NFL, and they say like, oh, that guy won $1 million. His lineup's way over leveraged. Still gets to keep the $1 million. Good for him. It's just saying in other sports, basketball, prime example. Like in basketball, you don't want 8 guys under 10% owned. It's just so unlikely to happen. Those other guys are going to be the spot to go to. So I think that's important.
Yeah, that's the whole conversation of, it's not just who we play, it's who we choose not to play. And you need your guys to not just play well, but also to outperform the popular guys that you don't have. And so if you are fading too many high probability guys, the chances are that one of them is going to outperform your lower probability plays. And so that's why the balance between the two is the better way to go.
And if it helps you to not be angry or frustrated or mad about it, I know everyone just, gets so pissed and tilts and does all this stuff. It's good for them. Like, I get it. But it's like, if you're on a Scottie lineup and that was your conviction, and all of a sudden, let's say guys you couldn't get in there. Let's say it's, Morikawa, Henley, Siwoo lineups that are needed. Like, you were just never getting on that path. You weren't on that path. Like, you were on the Scottie path. So like, yeah, those guys got there and they were the other high probability options up top. It's just they all happened to get there and Scottie didn't. So like, you should have to sort of live with that as well and think about what can happen and not be as stressed by that. It's just affecting and taking mental energy from your showdown lineups or thoughts you need to put in now because you're not doing well in the main slate or something like that.
And last point on this, I think this also illustrates why wave stacking can be so advantageous, because what's more likely that in a lineup where you fade all of Oberg, Fitzpatrick, Henley, Siwoo Kim, Collin Morikawa, what's more likely? That all of them fail because independently they just play poorly, or they all happen to be in a wave that ends up being tougher conditions. That's one surprising thing, but now all of them have this, equal uphill battle to actually get themselves into contention. Obviously, the latter is more likely. They're more likely to all fail together because they ended up in the more difficult wave, even if we were surprised that that's the more difficult wave than all of them independently playing poorly when they're such good golfers.
Agreed. Yep. Well said. Let's talk a little bit more just about how to leverage these chalk builds this week. We talked some on, like you mentioned, the GPP scores, being able to look at sort of different waves and stacking them in full and others. Is there other ways that you're seeing here? Like, we talked about some of like different ways you can use guys at certain price points and how you can put them together and not be on 5 of the chalkiest guys from the other wave as an example, but any other ways that are standing out to you early on just from the common build versus what you can do to leverage that in single entry?
No, I mean, it's pretty simple. I think there are 2 paths this week. The first is to embrace the AM PM stack, but then instead of going to that collection of guys that we just mentioned, say, okay, well, what happens if this is the Scottie week and now I want the more studs and duds build. And so you can get away with, Henley and Oberg and Fitzpatrick playing well if you have Scottie who wins and you have a couple, cheaper guys who also perform really well. And so just deviating from a pure structure standpoint within that wave stack with the Scottie build, or you just totally flip the build and you say, what happens if the other wave ends up the advantageous one? And to me, that, as we just talked about, that is the smarter route and the higher probability route, because it makes it so much easier for all of Oberg, Fitzpatrick, Henley, Siwoo Kim, and Collin Morikawa to either fail or just underwhelm together.
All right. Do you want to talk one and done for a minute? Do you got thoughts on that for this week? Obviously, we go back to this is the big boy event. That's what everybody waits for, but we obviously had signature events already that have big prize pools like this. So we've had enough conversations, I think, in the past around like those in segment tournaments and things like that. I know it changes up, but just in general, we're going to keep it to a main focus. Our guy Sheets will be on at Ship It Nation later today, breaking down his one and done thoughts for the Splash Sports and the Mayo stuff and all that. But what's your thoughts on one and done this week? How you might attack it?
Yeah, 3 main thoughts here. The first is obviously like know the position you're in and know the format that you're in and the pool and the format that your pool uses, because some of them pay out in segments, some of them don't. And so if you're near the top and on the verge of a really nice first segment payout, then play Scottie or play Colin, play one of the best options that you possibly can. And if you're not, then maybe save the big guns and try to win one of the later segments. You're going to end up playing all the same guys anyway. The one thing that I'll kind of add on to that, though, is this is the highest purse. This is, a win here is more valuable than a win anywhere else. And we also have a very, very strong course fit model and a very unique course fit this week, where distance just doesn't matter as much as it does in most golf courses on the PGA Tour. Accuracy matters a ton. Iron play matters a ton. And then both on and around the green play is really predictive here as well. So it's one where guys like Morikawa and Henley are going to project better here than they do elsewhere. Guys like Scottie Scheffler is the ultimate fit for this golf course. Yes, he's longer this year, and he's actually been really, really good in that department. But like, you just can't compete with Scottie from an accuracy, approach, short game, and putting standpoint. There's nobody else like him. And the thing about this course fit model is essentially what it does is it takes the typical skill gap between good and great players and widens it, because so much is so predictive here. And so the best player projects even further ahead of the rest of the field here than most courses. So it's obviously a really good place to play Scottie if you've got him. It's just one of those weeks where like I almost think you don't need a ton of strategy. You just play your favorite guy. And the one thing I'll say there is, like, we do know ownership has really, really, really reflected course fit so far this season in the one and done pools. And so maybe trying to find a guy who's long and straight, and especially like if you're using the strokes gain driving accuracy that we have at FTN, there are a couple guys who are long, but they actually are some of the most accurate guys on tour as well. And so they are probably going to be underrated by the field, and maybe you get an ownership discount that way.
Yeah, I like that. I think the other thing a lot of people talked about was the Rory stuff. I know we didn't go heavy into it, and for anybody who's new to this show, I mean, there's tons of picks and play shows breaking it all down. We built lineups yesterday. You can go back and watch it on the Mayo Media Network. Myself, Alex, and Mayo going through and actually putting together the lineups. So, if you want to see that, going through the plays and stuff. But just noting from the perspective like the Rory situation this week, that is part of where the Morikawa, Fleetwood, and Scottie stuff comes from that we've already hit on quite heavily here. But just noting it. Some people were asking, like, what about using Rory in one and done, where most people shy away? It's like a way that you could still have access to him because of the late tee time, the late WD last week. Not even sure if he'll get into a practice round today or not yet. So all these different factors. What's your thoughts on using Rory in a one and done, just because of the back specifically?
It's weird because I don't know. How in tune is the general public with the fact that Rory's not getting a practice round, or do they just see his name in the field and they go click it, right? And so we might not see the ownership discount that we're expecting to see in one and done pools. Now, it'll probably be reflected in like the Mayo Cup. But like if you're in a just a home league type one and done, I don't think you're going to get as much of an ownership discount as you're expecting on Rory. So I wouldn't be interested there. Maybe it's a better play in the Mayo Cup. But again, like I think that's more of a personal decision, and it's based on how you're doing so far this season, whether you're in a segment race or not. And like my personal thought is I'm going to be able to find a better spot to play Rory in a segment where I'm doing well and have a chance to actually win. And that's when I want to use him. And it seems like an unnecessary risk to play Rory, who might be hurt right now in one and done, when I know I can play other elite players at low ownership for the one and done contest.
Yeah. The betting breakdown, we touched on a little yesterday. I know, said, you're never wrong, just early. And Nikolai Hogard came up. I did remember to hit it this time with you guys. I got 140 to 1 there with the three places each way. Do you have any other thoughts from a betting perspective this week, or ways you can use certain things to your advantage for anybody playing the pick'ems? Just different. Usually you got something from a different angle. What's your thoughts on betting this week?
Yeah, let's go pick them again, because I'm not honestly, like, I'm not super into any of the outrights that I posted this week. I've got 3, but they all ended up in the wrong wave too. So the one I might still add is Jake Knapp. If I've got to look at what his number is now, but if it drifts at all, I'm going to be interested in Jake Knapp in the quote unquote good wave. And this is an awesome week for underdog and for all of pick'em. I will say, by the way, This is a really good time to get in on my Discord. You can use promo code leverage 10% off forever. We've hit 19 of the last 20 NBA picks, literally 19 of the last 20. It's been winning night after winning night. So much fun of late, and hopefully we can keep that going. And PGA's been really good as well. And I think from an underdog standpoint this week, PGA is going to be awesome because the shifting winds and the shifting wind direction can be so incredibly advantageous for those picks like hole 16 through 18 strokes, something we did this past week at the API with a lot of success and almost had a ton of success, almost went 6 for 6 there on hole 16 for 18 strokes. That type of opportunity is going to be there a lot this week. And so I can't wait to just be firing those day after day.
Yeah, I've been in the Discord, the Blick Scored, as they like to call it. I've been checking it out. So crushing it on the NBA side. Side note, we're at the end of the show. We're going to pick our lane. Did you follow the Bam stuff last night?
Yes, it was ridiculous. That's
insane. I don't care. They can say old man yells at cloud. It's not even like a Kobe fan thing or nothing. Like that is just whatever it was, 30 points. And we're literally just fouling on purpose to get this record. I don't know. Maybe it's just normal and it's all good. I just thought that was nuts for me. I said this more like NBA's got to be down so bad with load management, last minute scratches. You got the stat padding, the teams tanking, all the freaking networks you got to buy into just to be able to, the blackouts, the ability to even watch sports. Like it's tough enough as it is in all the games, and kids going to watch a star play and he doesn't show up even, like all these different things. But what were your thoughts?
Well, yeah, it was really funny too, because up until like a week ago, one of the ways that we were making a lot of money over an underdog was with free throw alts. So we were taking alt overs that were just really high multipliers, higher than they should have been. And Bam was one of our favorite ones, and he was very successful for us, but we never got him at 43 free throws or whatever the hell, 36 free throws that it was last night. So missed out on that. But I thought JJ Redick said it really well, where he was like, I saw that he was I was told that he was at 77 points. So I turned on the game, and that was a different kind of basketball. It was really, really ugly down the stretch. The thing that I really hated wasn't Washington continuing to foul him, because they were just defending him hard and he was baiting them into fouls. But it was Miami intentionally fouling late to get possessions back, to get the possession of the ball back quicker. Like that was just really, really gross. So I did not like the end of it. It was, look, good for Bam. He played a phenomenal game. I just thought the last few minutes were really gimmicky and not a very good basketball product.
Yeah, I think it was like more Spoelstra just standing on the sidelines the way he does too. It's kind of just annoyed me, but whatever. It's like I said, old man yells at cloud. I get it. Good for him. And 83 points is insane. Missed 7 free throws and still got that. So pretty wild to just see that stuff happen. Obviously the Crosby stuff was another thing that came up last night. And that's kind of interesting, but let's get to our lanes. Let's end this thing out, Alex. And it was a good breakdown going through it all with you, but what's going to be your lane for the week?
So I've got two, and the first one is just kind of a broad approach. And that is, I obviously everyone knows I'm a single entry guy, which to me means most weeks I'm building one lineup and putting that in all of the contests that I'm in. But this week, part one of my lane is to actually go to 3 entries so that I can really take advantage of the uncertainty that I see in the weather. So regardless of how the wave advantages play out, I'm going to have a lineup that is well suited for it and is going to benefit from that wave advantage showing up. And then part 2 of that is I'm actually going to favor the PM AM wave. So I'll probably have 2 of those stacks, one of the AM PM. And essentially this is kind of coming from what I talked about earlier, which is I'm looking not to say, okay, which is a better bet between the AM PM or the PM AM. It's which players look like the best plays, and then how do I turn those plays into the best lineup? And when I'm looking at our GPP scores over at FTN, the guys who are the most underowned, like Xander Schauffele, Justin Rose, Sam Burns, these guys are in the PM AM wave. So I want to build around that kind of core and then give myself multiple chances to have the right combination of those guys in my 3 entries. So part 1 and part 2 of the leverage lane there.
Yeah, mine's going to be pretty similar, but it shouldn't surprise anybody. But, this week for sure, if you're not doing it, like I said, people can complain all they want, but I'm building in sets. So I'm going to be playing the 150 max. I'll probably do like 60, 60, 30 or something like along those lines and just go after it. I might adjust it based on sort of your point. I might look at it harder, but one thing I am kind of starting to favor now is this PMAM. So if I was adding a secondary component to it, like it could end up being more that, like a 70-50 and leave it and do it that way, or 75-45 or something, only because I really like it from the perspective of, like I said, I think like the quote unquote good wave stuff, your weather breakdown earlier really, people always said this about me, but like I listen to what others say and it kind of like sparks differently in my brain, I guess. But like for me, the way you said it, you weren't even selling the PMAM, but it sold me more on the PMAM. Like it's like if there's no delay, it's avoiding the gusts and stuff still, but maybe it's more about the AM on Friday. What if the north wind hits Friday afternoon again? Just thinking about those guys sitting on the tee and laughing about it. The fact that all of the AM guys, like I said, when you sort by just the chalk currently, and you've got Morikawa, Scheffler, Ludwig, Siwoo, Henley, Knapp, all these guys, Bhatia, Fitzpatrick, Berger, like you name them all, they're all in that AM. So it's like I can just naturally avoid that. And then there's still some really good options in that range. Like I like Xander. I think if Decky gets hot, we know he's actually had great rounds. Remember the year he won the Players in round 1 and then it got shut down because of COVID? It was like that was another one. So it's like there's other guys that you can go to. There's guys in both ranges, like we said, but I think I am just leaning that way a slight bit more based on our conversation around it today. And just all those factors lead to me feeling a little bit better about it. And then yesterday I gave a nod to our guy, Dak 1616, been around forever. Awesome dude, won the Millie the year that Mayo and I were wrong on the Players. He had the opposite side of that wave and he hit me up last night and said he appreciated the shout out. So shout out to him, but maybe it's that way. And that's sort of a sign as well, a line of thinking of like, oh yeah, that was something that you could do here. And to me, it makes a little bit of sense just on all the other factors involved. So wave splits, PMAM favoring, that's going to be my spot here for now.
Man, that COVID year, my worst guy after round 1 was 4 under that year. So that would have been a good one for them to play out, I think. But yeah, I really like that thought.
There was a crazy thing, actually. I have the DM somewhere saved and just the screenshot of it, but there was a guy leading the Millie Maker. The guy leading the Millie Maker, obviously there was somebody leading him. So the guy leading the Millie Maker after day 1 was trying to sell his lineup, right? Like looking for a market for it. Now, first of all, we're only 1 round in. And I get it. I understand where he's coming from, but just to note it, it was kind of interesting. But I think there was a rule. I don't want to get this wrong, but I'll just say whatever I think because I don't care. But I think it was like if round 2 started, it was considered action or something. Like I forget the exact wording on it, but it was considered like action where they would pay out based on the tournament. Like it went to round 2, therefore it's going to be paid out based on the current standings. So he was kind of hoping that it just, tees off for round 2 or whatever, but obviously with it getting canceled, getting nothing. So I'm sure he's got a story that he'll live to tell forever with that one. But yeah, 1 round is not the end of a tournament. Besides what every Discord tells you is after the first birdie's made and that person's winning. But yeah, this was one of those spots again. So just another fond memory of the Players. I'm hoping this year, the fondest memory of them all, a Millie Maker win, could be the way. I got that mega ticket this week that I'm quite excited about.
Excellent.
Right on, man. Let people know where they can find you. I know you mentioned the Discord earlier. We talked through FTN, all that, but on X and then everything you got going on this week besides just this.
Yeah, find me at Alex Blickle 1 over on Twitter. You can find links to my Discord there in the bio. You can find links to FTN as well. And I can't remember if I already mentioned it on this show. I mentioned it yesterday with Pat, but we're debuting our contest sims this week for PGA. We really spent a lot of time on it to make sure that we could incorporate things like wave advantage uncertainties and creating different scenarios there. So all of that's going to be captured and debuting high stakes ownership this week. So if you're like Tambo and you're in that 4444, check out the new high stakes ownership. I've been fine tuning that for weeks. Our single entry ownership has kind of led the industry for a while now, and hopefully the high stakes stuff can do the same. Yeah, it's awesome, man. Lots of good stuff going on. My man, Timmy Dubs, I got to say, if anyone else is out there talking about wave stacking and they're just playing like a 4-2 or a 3-2, like they're not stacking. They're just playing, they're building lineups. So when we're talking about that, that's 6 O's, right? Yes. We're talking about 6 guys in the AM. Otherwise, we're explaining it, at least we are, of saying like, okay, I'm going to go Scottie and 5 guys from the other wave. Well, that's when it's a 5-1. But yeah, other than that, when we're talking about wave stacking, I'm talking about all the way. 6 O's. We've got 60 plus guys to choose from in each wave. It's not difficult to find 6 that you like. That's right. And that's another thing too. If you're doing it, that's again, my soapbox on this topic is like when people are saying, well, but I only play single entry. Well, you're going to find a lot, but like Alex said, it's not as correlated as you'd like. Scottie and who's it now? Let me just see here real quick. Where is the groups? Like, let's look. Where's Scottie? Scottie. Who's he with tomorrow?
Is he with Fleetwood? Yeah, Scottie and Fleetwood, exact same group. Scottie could make 4 birdies and Fleetwood could make 4 bogeys. Same group, same tee time, same wave. There's no correlation on that side of things on how good the player plays within it. So if, when people are talking about, oh, I'm going to play that, I'm a single entry player, that's fine. You stay in your lane, you're building your AM, PM, whatever. I'm just saying, if you actually thought there was a wave advantage, specifically even one way that you think it's going to be, like if you say, I don't care what anybody says, I'm going with the last thoughts Tambo and Alex mentioned, that I'll just risk it and go PMAM. Great, but you should play a ton of lineups because there's still now you've just shrunk your pool down to 60-ish guys, and you are able to build tons of lineups because there's probably 30 to 40 that you kind of want to put in within there. Well, you're in a great spot to play anywhere from 20 to 150 lineups now because you have that. You just have to disperse your money differently. Maybe that's the mini max instead of the higher stuff. Maybe that's the $5 instead of the $25 with $1 million. I guess you'd be pretty excited about $100,000 still, right? So just thinking about it from that perspective, I think if you feel like you've got an angle of attack, actually attack it and don't just say you did because, I played the weather angle, but of course I got 2 guys wrong. How many lineups did you play? 1. All right. Well, you thought you had an angle. You wanted to attack it, but you only attacked it in 1 lineup. It's not you, my man, Timothy there. I work with Tim and he's an awesome dude, but I'm saying like just for people in general, when they're talking about it, it's like they act like they're forced into a way. Like I said, the app is not jumping off the page to you to say, hey, you're not allowed to do that. You can do whatever you want, but we recommend you stick within your means, and contest selection and bankroll management are part of that as well. So
the only thing I'll add on top of that is I think it also matters how many people you're competing with, because while adding more lineups gives you more opportunities, if you're playing against more people, you also have to be more perfect. And so, as someone myself who I don't have many lineups, like I'm still just doing 3 entry, but if you look at the contest that I'm in, I'm still in contests that fit my typical strategy. I'm not trying to go beat 2,000 people with my 3 lineups. I picked the $100 50 5 max, for example, where I'm going up against like 259 people total or something like that. And so you can control it both ways. You can add how many quote unquote bullets that you have, but if you have to beat more people, you have to be more perfect, or you can control how many people you have to beat, and then you have to be less perfect. And so kind of two ways of doing the same sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think if you have more money to play, I think it's always nice too that if you can go up to like something that can pay more on top of combining all that stuff. But again, to each their own with their bankroll. And we always want to be where you can sort of extrapolate it up or down. We recognize not everybody has, the bankroll to say I can go play a 555 or a 155 max or whatever else that might be. So awesome show, man. I love this. It's not I think Rolap said it good today. I saw one of the highlights there. He said it's not up to us to decide if this is a major. It's up to you guys, but we just want the events to be this type of tier. Everybody should be excited for this event. This is a fun one. Great watch, amazing course, all of that combined. If you guys want to get in at shipitnation.com, you can try the 5-day trial for $19 or hit me up on X at ToeTagginTambo. I'll get you a 50% off your first month if you want that as well. Thank you guys for watching. Appreciate everybody. That's going to do it for this episode. For Alex, for myself, ToeTagginTambo, let's ship it.